Tuesday, June 7th, 1993. Today I will be talking to Mrs. Tina Murphy of Morale, who is 93 years old and will tell me what she knows about her Irish background. Okay, I'll sit right there. Okay?
Well, if you want to know something about me, well, we had a new school built, and I was the first one that went. I went at 4.5 years to school.
Okay. What did you have? Were the teachers Irish or?
Had some very good teachers. I don't see that there was anything Irish about any of them at all. And I guess I'd be the only one in school that had any Irish attached to them, perhaps. I was we were the only Catholics on that road.
That was the church road.
About 5 miles were the only ones, and I was the only Catholic at school. So I went right along in school at my own pace. They let me travel at my own pace. And I guess I was what you call a good student. I don't know if I realized it or not, but I was good to study. My father was very helpful to me. He was the one at home that really helped me.
He came from Ireland?
And not that he had so much education, but what he had was good judgment and able to apply it and able to help me, see, in that way. And I went along, and when I was 9 years old, I was taking French. Now, this is ridiculous to me today, but at that time I didn't know any difference. I was taking algebra and French and Latin and geometry when I was 9 years old, along with all the other subjects, geography and history and reading, writing and so forth. I was not crazy. That's a fact. I went to town to school. My father took me out of school here. I went to the Notre Dame convent. In fact, we moved to town shortly after, but I went to the Notre Dame convent. And when I was about 13, I didn't fully graduate from there, but I went there. I think I was about 13. I went to the Union Commercial College. And when I was 14, I have my certificates all here with me. And when I was 14, I got a certificate for bookkeeping. And when I was 15, before I was 15 in June, and I got my certificate in the early spring for typing and shorthand and commercial law and things like that. So then my sister came home from the States. She had a small baby. And she just kind of insisted that I go back with her. And of course, going to Boston, that sounded pretty good those days. And they said yes at home, I could go. It wasn't hard to find a job in town. Mr. Moran said I was a very good typist and shorthand writer, and he wanted my father to send me to college another year just for shorthand and typing. He said he'd like to make a court stenographer out of me. He said I made very good shorthand notes, read them well back to him. But I went away with her. I was 15 in June. I went away with her August. And I guess I had a mind of my own, that I like to use. And I decided that she kind of wanted me for a babysitter. Of course, she had a small baby. She couldn't go out very much. And she was a great dancer. She loved to dance. And her husband and her used to go out, and they'd leave me home alone with the baby. And the section they lived in, well, those days were just like here, you know. It was out in a country place. It was dark and dreary. And they had a nice home and all of that, but I used to be scared to death to stay home alone with the baby. And I didn't stay very long now, I'm telling you. I went out one day and got me a job. I knew a girl that boarded with me in Charlottetown, boarded with my mother. She was going to Miller's College. I went to Union Commercial. And she was from way up east. Her name was Lapierre. And I knew where she worked, in a large mental institution. And I found my way there, and if I had it to do over again right now, I'd be afraid to try it. But I did it. I was 15. I went into Boston, 20 miles from where I was, Concord, on the train. There was no buses then, you know, and there was no... This is over 70 years ago. And I had to cross the city to get a train out to where this girl was. I remember somebody telling me never to ask questions of any man unless he had brass buttons on him. So, for my information, I always asked somebody with brass buttons on them. And he told me to go upstairs here. Like that, I can see the stairs now. They wound up and around to get to the elevated train. And I got across to the South Station and got a train for Medfield. Well, when I got out there, I had about a good half mile to walk to the hospital. And of course, I wanted a job because, but to be honest with you, I don't remember whether I had money enough to get back to my sister's that night or not. I didn't look far enough ahead. I had a little change, but I don't know whether I had enough to get back or not. But anyhow, I asked them if they had anything to do with typing. That was out. They got all the typists through the civil service in Boston, the state center. See, this was a large mental institution. And if you remember the state, of course, there were 2,700 patients. So I get out there, and the girl was off duty. She was away. And I found I couldn't get on typing. I couldn't get any work in the office. So I said, isn't there anything I could get to do in a large place like this? So the superintendent sent me the matron. She came in, and she asked me how old I was. I suppose I didn't look so good. I said I was 18. Well, I couldn't get hired, you know, working 15 or 16. They wouldn't take me. They wouldn't be allowed to take me in the street. So, do you know the first job I got?
No.
Cleaning vegetables in the kitchen.
In this institution?
Well, I didn't stay at that long.
Mm-hmm.
One day was sufficient. And I didn't know too much about cleaning vegetables. Mother never taught me very much about the kitchen.
Right.
I used to let the farm when I was 11 and a half or 12, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I always went to school. I'd be working out around his father. I'd help him at the so forth and so on. And she never taught me to cook or things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But anyhow, I scraped too much cotton, what Jonathan told me to do, when I was going to get out of there.
Yeah.
So the matron came in the afternoon, and I said, kitchen work, I said, I don't think, I never done any kitchen work. What else would you have in a big place like this that maybe I could do? I said, do you have anything in the sewing room? She said, can you sew? Well, I said, I mean, do you have a sewing machine to run? Yes, we do, and we need someone right now. Well, I said, I can run a sewing machine, sew anything that you want. Mother was a big sewer. She taught me how to sew, but that was about all. So I worked in there, I guess it could be about 9 months. But I had ideas and trying to get out of there, but it was clean and it was nice, and I was getting paid, and all I was doing was thinking. I was 20 miles from Boston. There was no place out there where I could do anything. I mean, study or go anywhere. There was nothing I could do. But I kept thinking about it. So one day I was sitting at the sewing machine here, and I looked out, and I saw a lovely nurse all in white. I'd never seen them before. She was all in white with a black band on her cap, and she had about 50 patients. She and a couple of more girls, they were attendants, out walking with the patients. And I was astounded. I remember the surprise. On the island here, up to my age, I never talked about nurses or heard about them or saw one, you know. And I inquired about her, how she got that. Well, they said she went that time it was 2 years training. So she said they had to go for 2 years training, and they had a training school right here. She said it's a mental school, but they send you away to a general hospital for 1 year out of the 2. That sounded pretty good to me. I hopped over to the superintendent that very evening. And the next day I was on the wards. So I kept going from there. The first job I had, when they put me on, I was a big girl. I think I was sort of bigger than most girls. The first job they gave me was 12 rooms where patients were in seclusion and straitjackets. Of course, I couldn't, I was responsible for them in a way, but of course, I had to have help. And boy, oh boy, that was some job. But I never gave up. I don't know, it never occurred to me to give up anything. You know, if I had it to do, I never run away from it. I always stuck to it. But many is the time I got my hair pulled and got a good slap and a punch or a kick or something, you know. But there were those 12 patients. And then I had to work out on the day hall. There'd be a day hall of about 80 patients that needed help. Well, I stayed there 2 years, and training didn't start until the fall. So I went in training. They had sick wards, you know. Then they sent you to New York for a year, Harlem, New York. And the other girls, some of the other girls that went and came back, used to tell awful stories about in New York on duty that they took care of mostly colored patients, you know. And those young fellows and the like of that would say terrible things to them and so forth. But of course they were patients, and that's for the General Hospital. That's where they were working. And somehow I was afraid. I didn't know anything about New York. That scared me. That was too big. I really bought that. So after a while I left. And I came home for a while. And I went back and I went to another institution. And I went in training there for keeps. And just when I got through my 2-year training, the 3-year went into effect. Well, I could have bought my RN for $10 if I wanted to. All who had graduated at that time could have bought that, but I didn't. I said I'd like to go for a third year in a large general hospital. So they sent me to Boston City. Slavish work. We had no arteries, you know. And we had no wind-up beds, and we had nothing. And we hard work, 12 hours a day. But everybody else did it, and if they could do it, I could do it. There was 5 of us sent. And I was going to work one morning, going through the tunnel below, and then going up to the ward, you know. And I saw those people coming up the big, long tunnel, and they had a suitcase, and I wondered who they were. When I got up to them, they were my own classmates that went in there with me. And they said, there was 5 of them, they said, we're leaving today. I said, what? They said, we'd come down and see if you want to come with us. I said, what would I want to go for? I came here for a year. Well, they said, we're going back to our own hospital. Well, I said, well, that won't gain you much. You will never be a nurse. That is, you may be called a graduate nurse, but you'll never be an RA, and you can never take the examination. And I said, no. And one of them said to me, oh, come on, Mother, be a sport. And I said, I'm going to be the only sport in the crowd and stay. I said, I'm going to stay for my year. I don't care. I said, what they do to me. God, I worked hard. And then after that, I wasn't satisfied with well, I had 3 months medical, 3 months surgical, 3 months pediatrics, and 3 months contagious. That took my year. Well, then I wasn't satisfied. I thought I'd like to be an operating room nurse. Oh, I had some operating room work, but not much, you know. But I thought I'd like to get deeper in, so I went to a private surgical hospital. It's a lovely hospital. And I took 6 months surgical. Never was any good to me.
No?
The day I got through there, I walked right into a job that night as night supervisor at the new psychopathic hospital in Boston. They just built a new hospital. It was 125 beds to take care of mentally ill patients. Up to that time, they never gave mentally ill patients any particular care. And now they were going to start treatments. So I knew the nurse that got the job of superintendent nurses used to be my head nurse when I was in training at the city hospital. And to tell you the truth, she sent for me to go over and see her. And I went, and she offered me a job as night supervisor. And I never went back to the general hospital again. I was all my life. I was night supervisor there for a year and a half. And then there was a doctor there. Don't know why he did it. He must have had more faith in me than I had in myself. But he was superintendent in this hospital where I told you I was taking care of the... He was superintendent of that 2,700-bed hospital. And he came down on the ward one morning. I don't know why he did it. He came down there. Oh, he was a middle-aged man, got home from the army, married man, family. He was going out there superintendent. And he come down and asked me if I'd go for chief supervisor. And I said, Doctor, do you think I can do it? I'm only 22 years old. I said, I went in training really young, and I'm only 22. And I said, could I handle it? He said, I think you can. I said, I think you can. He said, your hands in this wall? Well, I never was anything then. From that day till that day I left work, but the supervisor, never been a general nurse, you know.
Did you miss that?
And at the psychopathic hospital, after a year and a half as supervisor, I got tired of night duty. Wasn't sleeping very good, so I went up and asked the superintendent of nurses if I could go on days for a while and see if I get some sleep. She said yes. She says I was just looking for somebody to take charge of the treatments. So I had the greatest opportunity that very few nurses ever had. I went right through the routine of the treatments that they followed and take care of. First, they tried the baths. They kept patients in tubs 24 hours a day. Just took them out every 4 hours for bathroom privileges.
Mm-hmm.
Put them that. And of course they were tied right in. They had a big canvas right over the tub because they were very disturbed patients, and you can imagine the way they kicked and fussed. And there was just a place for their head to go through, and they couldn't get down in the water. There was no way for them to get down. So after a while they'd quiet down, you know. And the water seat kept running in constantly and running out the same. So I had charge of that business. I had a couple, it was with the men, I had a couple of good men attendants all the time. So when they decided to give that up, then they went to the hot packs. And I was unfortunate enough to get up on the female ward as charge of treatment then, and believe me, it was no fun to have to put those patients in packs. If I could have stayed on the downstairs in the male ward, but the nurse that was there for years, and she was away and she came back. So they moved me upstairs. But putting a patient in a hot pack is no joke if it's a disturbed patient. I'd have help, you know, but it was a very difficult job. Well, then we tried the hot packs, and after that, we had the cold packs. This would go on, you know, for weeks and some months, and then they'd make the decisions if they thought they were being helped. And then after that, electric shocks. And then, of course, you had to know how to hold your patient. That was one of my jobs. Hold your patient. If you don't hold your patient right, they convulse. And there's a possibility that they could break their backs the way they have. But I was strong. I could hold them in position. And I used to hold the women patients, of course, for electric shock. I went through that. Because nobody touches the button to give them the shot when you're a doctor. Then after the electric shocks, they didn't think that any of those treatments, I don't think, gave them the response that they thought they should have, you know, they'd like to have. So then they tried what they call insulin shock. And they gave them large doses of insulin. And we had 2 nurses there. I didn't know about that. I was never trained in that. But I happened to be a supervisor at the time. And I had 2 nurses on that unit that really understood it and knew just how much they could give and what the reactions were, you know, and all of that. They tried the insulin shock. Then they tried the lobotomies. You know what that is, but they go in here and this frontal lobe, they burn that out. I was in the operating room, and when they did that, I used to go in with them. And then after that, they started this therapy, and they used to try group therapy, what they call group therapy. Well, that was really worked. Sometimes there'd be patients that hadn't spoken for years. And they'd get them in there. They used to bring a dozen at a time and sit them around a big table. And there were 2 or 3 times I remember this happening. It was really funny. A patient that never spoke for years. Nobody ever heard a word out of them for years. And there'd be another patient maybe that would talk all the time, see? And she'd get sick and tired of listening to her, maybe. And by golly, she'd up and talk. It was the funniest thing. She hadn't spoken for years, and she'd get mad at the other way she talked. Well, this group therapy, I don't think it seemed to do too much either. There used to be some women come out from Boston to have meetings on alcohol. And, then they tried just private therapy. And I think they kind of thought they got more from that than anything else. That's all they're doing here is private therapy. When I came home here, they were doing what we left there. So I had the good fortune to go all through this business. Most nurses never had it. But I ended up on PEI just the same.
Right?
You wouldn't want to be a nurse, would you?
No.
No?
Not at all.
All the training today is nothing like we went through, though.
No, I guess not.
Oh, we worked like slaves. 12-hour day. A half a day off from 1 o'clock. If you had your work done, you could go.
Mm-hmm.
If you didn't, you'd have to finish it before you went.
Goodness.
Well, this isn't getting your work done.
Can you tell me, your father came from Ireland?
In Ireland?
Did your father come from
No,
Ireland?
yes, but he came as an infant.
Yes. Do you know much about that?
No, I don't know really anything. My father came as an infant to Newfoundland.
What was your father's name?
Tobias, Tobias, Tobias Mullen.
Mm-hmm. Do you know what was your mother's name?
Mary Morrissey. Her people came from Ireland, but she was born in Newfoundland.
Did you know your grandfather?
No,
No.
I never knew either my grandfathers or grandmothers. Those days, 90 years ago, they didn't fuss with kids in the same way they do now. We didn't get all the consideration that youngsters get now, I'm telling you. Oh, we were well looked after and well fed and all of that, but when I think the children now,
Attention.
pension they get.
But your father lived on the church road when he came, did he?
No, he lived on the Melbourne Road, next road. And when they came to the church road, he bought a piece of land and he went in and cut down a place big enough to build a house. He could build a house. He was a good carpenter and he built a house for them. And that's what they moved into. Many's the time I heard them talk about it.
Can you remember them talking about it?
And then they when we left it, there was over 100 acres clear. And when they went there, they cut down and then they stuffed it or got somebody to do it and cleaned up the land. And first they used to plant potatoes around where the trees were cut off, around the tree. They'd plant potatoes in there, and they'd have enough for the winter. They'd have potatoes grow, and they'd have. I never remember on the farm of not having good food, the very best.
So your father was a farmer, was he?
My father what?
He was a farmer? He
Farmer?
was a farmer?
Oh, yes. Yeah. He was a good farmer. We had pigs and cows and horses, and my mother had a big flock of hens, and they were very ambitious farmers, great workers. My father always kept good horses. Yeah, I have two brothers. Yeah. He was for 30 years food inspector over there. He studied at Prince of Wales and at St. Dunstan's, and then he went over to Mount Allison, I think it was, for summer courses. My other brother went to California and he never came back. He was a great carpenter. Oh, he could make anything. He made a violin and played it. Oh, beautiful violin. Lord, how I wish I knew where it is.
What was his name?
Is what?
What was your other brother's name?
Will.
Will?
He ended up by being a builder of small houses in California. Always stayed there.
Can you remember any stories your father used to talk about? Like, that had to do with the Irish? Was there much...
Stories my father talked about?
About the Irish? Can you remember?
No, I don't think he knew that much about
No.
it, you know. He came as an infant, and perhaps his father and mother. Oh, I guess he used to talk and say that they had hard times. But he said that, I know one thing, he said that the people were very happy. Happier than the people are today, I think. But I never remember when we were on the farm, because I was 8 years younger than my sister, so I was the youngest of the group, and I was just alone most of the time. I never had anyone to play with, like. And I used to be around with my father working. I liked that. I had to be doing something. I was very active. But I liked to be outside working more than inside.
What was your sister's name?
Mary Alice.
Did she stay on the island?
Did she what?
Did she stay on the island?
Stay on the island? Oh no, she went to Massachusetts, and she never left there. Concord, Mass. No, she married young, a very good provider. He had a big business, a painting business. She married well.
Mm-hmm.
Had 5 nice children.
So, were there any traditions carried on, do you know?
Any what?
Any traditions carried on?
Traditions? Oh, I don't know. I suppose you might say working conditions was just followed along as they knew them. But of course my father came as an infant. He never knew anything of what was on Prince Edward Island.
Mm-hmm.
He worked in the States for a while.
Were there many settled on the Church Road?
Many
settlers on the Church Road?
Not, there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, I guess there was 7 or 8 on the road we were on, you know, to be a few miles long. But we were the only, I guess if you wanted an Irish family, we were the only ones.
You got along with everyone else, did you?
What?
You got along, did you, with the other people?
Oh, my father got along with everybody. He was a very good neighbor. No, we never had any trouble.
Were most of the other people Scottish? Do you remember?
I think they were.
There were no jokes.
Mrs. Dingwall is from there.
Oh, is she?
She just lived about a mile from me.
Mm-hmm.
Only, of course, she wasn't born for years after. I was gone a good while before. But I knew all her people. Her father went to school with me. I tell her about what he did to me one time. He used to be kind of cruel to me, but they had a prize given for penmanship. It was when the vertical writing came out, and I won it. And they sent me a certificate from Ottawa or somewhere, I suppose, to come from. It was a beautiful certificate. It could be about that long and about that, you know, and it was all written up in purple and so forth and so on. I never saw anything like it before. I was just simply, you know, awed by it. And the teacher gave it to me. And that was for the school. I won for the school. And it was tied up like that, and a little something tied around it. And so when school got out, it was up to me to get home with that, you know. So I started for home with the school bag in his hand, and the little certificate. I didn't know enough to put it in the school bag or get something around it or something. And there was snow on the ground, oh, good bit of snow. And this fellow came along and picked me right up and put my head right into the snow, and I got the snow all in my room, my certificate and everything, and me trying to get home with it. Was that an awful thing?
That was awful.
Oh, I'll never forget that. They used to do some hard things to me.
Is that because you were Irish, do you think?
Oh, I don't know that, but although my father never said a word or never got into any trouble about it, but if it was today, they wouldn't allow it. They used to do things to me in school, you know. I think it's because I was the only Catholic on the road. See, that's what sheep a lot of times. There's none of that today.
No.
But those days, I was sitting on the windowsill one day. Because I suppose I was doing my deviltry too, you know. I was sitting on the windowsill. I wasn't doing anything that day. And the window was wide open and about that far off the floor, you know. And it wasn't her brother, it was a cousin. He came in with an old dead snake and come up behind me and wrapped it around my neck.
You wouldn't be laughing then.
So, you know, they used to do things really to me.
Did you ever get them back?
Ever get what?
Did you ever get them back for doing those things to you?
No.
No.
No, they were all the wrong to get to me, you know. I was only 4.5 when I started. I wasn't too but a quarter of a mile from school, or perhaps not that. And I'd head for home in the evening as fast as I could go. In the evening, Father would always come and get me in winter time, and he'd take the whole bunch of them on a big sleigh and take them all home. No, my father never got into trouble with anybody. He was good friends with them all. But he did resent the things they did to me. He didn't ever say a word about it.
Would he ever say anything around the house? Would he say anything around your place?
Not to
at
them,
home?
he wouldn't say anything.
About them?
No, he just listened to me, you know, and he would say, well, are you sure you weren't doing something? But you can just imagine, I was the only one in the whole school all the time, you know. They used to, but that don't happen now, because that school isn't there anymore.
That was on the church road, was it? A school on the church road? That was a school on the church
Yeah.
road.
Someone bought that and made a home out of it.
Is it still there?
Yes, I know, I was hoping to see it. Oh, I drive over there every year when I'd come home. Or every time I'd come home, I would always drive over through that road and have a look at it and see if there were other people in there. The one thing we had that was really lovely was an orchard. It's a beautiful orchard. We had apples galore, crab apples, man apples, cherries, plums, gooseberries. We had currant bushes. I don't know how many rows of them, beautiful currant bushes. I used to pick currants in the summertime until they'd come out my ears, because if I picked well, I could go to the store with Mother and they'd let me drive the horse. So you see, I had a life of my own, sort of.
Was there a store on the church road? Was there a store on the church road?
Yes, I know. Up at St. Peter's, we had 7 miles to go to the store.
Wow.
And I used to feel so bad. I wanted to learn to play the fiddle. And you know, my father played, Dan played, Will played, and they not only played, they played well. They were equal to those Cape Breton fiddlers. They were really, really the best round. And of course, when I'd come home, sometimes I'd pick up a fiddle and I'd like to try. And Mother would say, now put that fiddle down, because if you break a string, they couldn't go 7 or 8 miles tonight to get a string. And there's no extra strings in the house, so now you better put that fiddle down. So nobody ever tried to help me or let me play or try to help me to play. Another thing I'd like to have done was dance. I loved to dance. My father was a step dancer. Oh, he's one of the most beautiful step dancers you ever saw. He really was a nice dancer. And I used to like to learn steps. And of course I couldn't do them, I'd have to learn. And they'd make fun of me, and then I'd go I'd go somewhere and cry, but I wouldn't let on to them. I cried. And now I resent it because they could have helped me. Yes, we used to have a great place for company. The people around would come, you know, and they'd say Saturday, Sunday evening, you'd do the. We used to have a lot of fun. Yeah, I don't never regret living on the church road. We had an athletic field. Dan was good in athletic, Will was good, and they had a place to play horseshoes, and they had a place for high jumps, and they had a place for all kinds of games and things they used to do. And the crowd would come over from the next road all around. Oh, there'd be a dozen or 15 of them there on a Sunday afternoon, all, you know, playing games, doing things. They wouldn't come in the house, bother Mother any around. They'd come out and perform their stunts out in the yard, see who was the best man. They used to play horseshoes and different things.
Did your grandparents live on the church road, do you know?
Did what?
Did your grandparents live on the church road? Do you
My
know?
grandparents, no. No, they lived on the Milburn Road. That was the next road. It run the same. It was over there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I used to go to what was my grandfather's home on my mother's side. I loved to go there. My Uncle Bill, I adored him. And I used to love to go there. And my aunt was good to me. Sometimes I'd stay for a couple of days. But I never knew my grandparents. They were dead. And my father's parents, I never saw.
Did they come to the island? Did they make it to the island?
They what?
Did your father's parents come to the island?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Did they settle in Milburn?
Yeah, they all came to the island and settled. Their homes are there yet. There's good homes. Well, no, my mother's home is gone. Somebody bought the house and moved it. And my uncle died, and my aunt died. But I don't ever remember the church road where we lived. I never remember that we were lonesome. Like we always had a lot of people around. But I know it was on account of the music and step dancing and the like of that. They enjoyed it. But I can see myself now being the first to go to school, 4.5 years old. In those days when we started, we didn't have any books. We had a big card about that length and about that width, and all the capital letters was up here, and then different, and then the figures and the small ones and so forth. And I forgot what all else was on that card, but there was a lot of little things. But I remember when I went to school, I could spell a lot of things, so I was way ahead. I could spell horse and cow and pig and all the animals outdoors. Father would be getting me to place, spell them.
You were probably smarter than most people there, were you?
Hmm?
You were probably smarter than the older ones, were you?
Yeah.
At school?
Mother was too busy knitting. My gosh, she knitted. She had a loom upstairs, and she used to weave blankets and weave this, that, and something else. She wove a piece of cloth one time, and of course it was white. The loom was warped with white yarn, whatever it was. And she wove this piece of cloth. And I remember, I can see them now going early one morning. There was a place away up east someplace that used to, what they call, block this and dye it, and you know, whatever they did with it. So I remember them going one morning. I remember I wanted to go, but they wouldn't take me. Oh, the wagon wasn't too big, I suppose. But they went and took this piece of cloth. In a week's time they went back and they got it. And she made a suit for my father. And you would never know that it was woven at all. Now what I wonder is this. My mother crocheted. I never saw anybody fancy crocheting, but I mean, she crocheted lovely edgings and the like. And she could sew, she could make anything. Oh, she kept me in lovely clothes going to school. Lovely clothes. All kinds of little dresses and jackets and things. I guess I was the best dressed kid in school. And the knitting she did. My stockings would be way up over my knee. I'd have pairs of them. She had a line in one room that hung from one corner like that across to another corner here. And all the bits, and you know what a double mitt is?
No.
Well, a mitt is a mitt, you know what that is?
Mm-hmm.
Well, a double mitt is just made with different yarns and different colours in it.
Okay.
And kind of fancy and nice. Then she'd knit each one of them, Dan and Will and Father, mitts for the winter and a pair of double mitts apiece. That was for Sunday. And then I had my so many pairs of stockings, and then we never had any overshoes, you know, they weren't heard of. But I'd have shoes. I never went to school with my bare feet, but other kids did. I never did. I'd put over my shoes a stocking, and then on that a rubber. That's what I had. And so I'd have those big stockings knitted right up to my knees. And Dan would have his socks, and Will, Father. And here was a whole line. I never remember her for knitting sweaters. I suppose she could if she would, but I never knew. She had enough to do to knit mitts and socks, I guess. What I wonder is this, where did these people learn to do all these things? Now they're going to school to learn everything. I often wonder where she ever learned to do the things that she could do. And of course other women too. And bake. And one of the old-fashioned stoves. And there was a great big oven like that up top on it, before the ranges came out, you know. And do you know how she used to test the heat? When she was going to make a cake and make bread, whatever it was, put up her feet and in the arm would go into the oven. Yeah.
That'd be scary to do.
Well, your mother might know about a few of those things, but perhaps not. she came along when things were, see, I'm 93, well, it's 85 years. I was remembering well by that time. That's a long time ago. But that's the way she tests the heat to bake. And we used to have these old-fashioned tea parties. I don't suppose they've ever had any in your time.
No.
Well, they had the old-fashioned tea parties, and look here, they were great. Men would bring the bushes and make a room, you know, a great big room, put up the study, and then they'd close them on in with bushes, you know, and a good floor in them for dancing. And they'd build a couple of those on the grounds for all square dances, of course. And then they'd have all the cakes and to sell and to eat, of course, good stuff. But every cake that Mother would take, and she'd decorate it, and Father would make the stand, she'd probably take a 3-tier cake, and he'd make the stand quite big for the bottom cake, and then a little smaller one up here, and then one up there. And she'd take those cakes, and I never saw the day when her cake didn't go on lottery. And then she'd get different kinds of paper and, little things at the store and trim it all up. I often wonder where she ever learned to do it, or everybody else the same, where they learn to do these things, because they've got to go to school now to learn everything.
I don't know.
Well, I'm afraid I talked a lot, but I didn't give you much information. Did you want it?
You gave me lots of information. That was great. It helped a lot. Okay.
What are you taking in school? Any special, or just your teacher, or what?
History. Studying history.
What?
History?
Oh, yeah.
That's it. I was studying history.